I tried the way of like caring what everyone else was doing and trying to follow what everyone did. And it wasn't working. And when I say it wasn't working, it means I like really wasn't happy. And part of what I talk about a lot in the money stuff is that as much as I talk about money, I actually talk probably more about mental health than I do about money. And this is what I really care about.
Get around those obstacles and make room to create opportunities. You are listening to the Around the Way podcast. And now, your hosts, Kyle King and Kiana Williams.
Welcome to another episode of Around the Way podcast, where we help you get around your obstacles and find a way to redesign your life. We are here with Bernadette Joy. It brings me so much joy. It really does. It really does that you are here in the building. I feel like we are like pandemic buds, and we've never really met in person. So it's so cool to see you. I know. You know what? Now that you say that out loud, I'm like, wait, we have not met in person, even though I feel like we know you. Yes. So it's so any like before you can introduce yourself, I'm just gonna say like Miss Crush Your Money Goals, Miss Money, Miss Pay Off $300,000 in debt, Miss Debt Free, Miss $1 million net worth. Okay. Yes. Can you talk about who you are, Bernadette, without saying those things, of course?
I was just gonna say, like,
what else?
I don't know what else to say. Hi, I am Bernadette Joy. I have so much joy being here, and I will say some things about me. I am a native New Yorker, born and raised. I am married to a wonderful guy named AJ. We are both Filipino, coincidentally, not on purpose. And I currently live in Asheville, North Carolina, which was a dream of mine to move to the mountains, which came unexpectedly because of the pandemic, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I am obsessed with helping people save and make money, because my goal is to change the face of wealth in America. And I think it's well overdue. Talk
to me a little bit more about changing the face of wealth in America.
I am very specific when I say change the face, and that is coming from my own personal experience as a millennial woman of color. Like when people think about a millionaire, I don't think a lot of people will picture someone who looks like me. And I figured that out when I myself was in financial services. I actually started my career working for the man, working for the big bank, and like, you know, being the obedient Asian daughter that I was like, okay, I got to do what my parents told me to do, which was to go get good grades, go to a good college, get a really high paying job, and I did all that stuff. And it was miserable. And part of what I realized in hindsight that made me quote unquote miserable about that was because I was trying to fit into a culture that like didn't see me for who I was, which was, I figured out, you know, early on I was pretty ambitious, pretty loud for an Asian female, like according to the stereotypes. And the advice that I got around making and saving money, you know, long story short, was built by old white men, and I'm not an old white man. So when
surprise!
Surprise! This is a podcast. In case you couldn't tell from my voice, I am not an old white man. And so when I think about the face of wealth in America, and we look at what those faces are right now, there's still a lot of old white men. So my goal is to bring a lot more diversity, and not just in the sense of just race and age and those kinds of things, but people from different backgrounds, people who have different ambitions and goals and ideas of what life should really look like. So
I love this. It's so interesting how life happens, and it kind of brings you full circle. Yeah. So first time I saw Bernadette, just go backstory. I was sitting in a hotel with my mom in Jersey, and we were watching Good Morning America. And we were just going through the news, and I was getting ready to change the news. I was like, Mom, like, who watches the news anymore? Clearly, she does. And then Bernadette comes on.
That's so cruzy to me.
Literally. And then Bernadette comes on, and then it's talking about this woman from North Carolina. And I was like, oh, I'm in North Carolina. And then the crush model came up, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I got to meet her. 2 weeks later, we're sitting on the same panel together with YBLA here in Charlotte.
Yes.
It's so crazy. And I'm like, hold on. And then I text my mom. I was like, hey, you remember? Because we took the picture of the actual acronym.
No way!
Yes, of the actual acronym. I'm going to show you while you're talking.
Oh my God, no way.
And it's so cool how I really believe that when you start to put energy in the world where you, like, seasons are ending, you want to start making better relationships, you want to start up-leveling your network, something that you know have definitely taught me. Mm-hmm. It's kind of just weird how everything just kind of falls into place. And now we're sitting here in front of each other, and we've taken your class, paid off debt, getting ready to close on a house. Like, you are just a freaking rock star. So just to let you know, like, you have inspired me. You've inspired Kiana. I just wanted to tell you that in person, that we finally met.
Oh my!
And it's true, because Kyle told me this story. And when you had your the challenge, the Crush Your Money Goals challenge, he was like, "So Bernadette's doing this challenge, and you need to do it with me. I want somebody to do it with me." And so, like, he's telling the truth.
No, literally.
Guys, I want to cry. Like,
no, do it. We're just going to cry together. It's going to just be a crying session on here. So I guess the first question that I have, and, you know, it's really important for us to really just set it here. The pandemic happened.
Yeah.
What happened with Bernadette Joy?
Okay. So here is where, just to reiterate what you said, I don't think things happen by accident, and I think you and I were meant to, like, meet for sure, in some shape or form. The fact that it happened the way that it did, like, blows my mind. I will say some pretext to the pandemic was I started this whole debt-free journey. You talked about paying off $300,000 of debt. A lot of my friends thought me and my husband were crazy and, like, why are you doing this stuff? Like, who would have predicted that a pandemic would happen?
Literally.
And when the pandemic happened and I saw people freaking out, right, which understandably so, we should be, it's a pandemic, but a lot of the freak out was related to money, right? So people are, like, starting to freak out about whether or not they can pay their bills, or if their job is still going to be there, or, like, their mortgages and stuff. And my husband and I kind of turned to each other and were like, was this, like, a godsend that we worked on this journey for the last 3 years? And because we paid off our house, because we paid our bills, like, all of that stuff, we're like, even if he lost his job and my business tanked and everything went to crap, like, we would still be okay. And so what that meant for me in 2020, here's the crazy story. 2019, 3 months, towards the end of, so Q4 of 2019, I had closed down my first business. And my first business was a business called Dressed. It was a local dress rental business. It actually was doing pretty well, but I decided to shut it down because I had started doing this stuff around Crush Your Money Goals, and I figured out this is where I really wanted to be. And I had to make a really hard decision of, like, do I keep doing that business, or do I do this one, or try to do both? And long story short, I decided to shut down that business. And for Q4 of 2019, I felt like crap because it was my first baby. Like, oh, did I fail? Like, literally, I was, like, under a weighted blanket, like, drinking wine and cheese and being like, what did I do? Right? So then 2020 comes and I said, all right, January 1st, I'm really going full-time into this Crush Your Money Goals business with the idea that it was going to be predicated entirely on, like, mass speaking engagements. So, okay, so I was like, okay, like, I felt really good. I had started doing classes. I had speaking engagements already lined up, and then everything got shut down. And like I said before, because we were in the position that we were, my husband and I was like, maybe this was why this was meant to happen. That while everyone is freaking out, that I can help be a resource for them and that I can be a source of stability and kind of calm and help them through their financial stuff. So March 2020, I launched my membership, the Crush Your Money Goals membership that it is now. And the idea was to have, to eliminate $1 million of debt from the world. And to be honest, I didn't know how that was going to happen. I was just like, seems like a good number. Like, I have some ideas on how to do it. And slowly had people coming into this program. And the things that we were trying to accomplish was very different from what I expected. I thought I was going to be doing a lot of the more tactical stuff, like, oh, I'll teach people how to do a budget. I'll teach people how to, like, pay down debt and stuff. And what I figured out was that the biggest thing that I had to help people overcome is the fear around finances, which was heightened by the fact they were in the middle of a global pandemic. So in a strange and serendipitous way, the last year has been such a learning curve for me in the best way possible, because aside from the things that I teach about finances, and where I think I differentiate is really teaching people about the psychology behind all of this. And that is where I get super excited and nerdy.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Like literally it's like you're the queen of jump and the net will appear. Right? And what I hear is that you had a plan, the plan didn't work, you were emotional, you created another plan, that didn't work as you thought, but God created it in a way where it still did work, and now you're here still influencing people, but in more of a heightened scale. So I guess, can you talk to the person that, I don't know, maybe even their business had to close during the pandemic, and they're struggling with jumping again because of that fear of whether it be finances or fear of, you know, some self-limiting beliefs. Could you talk to that person?
Yeah, and I have talked to a lot of those people in the last year, so I think that's very timely. What I have really figured out when it comes to the fear around finances is that a lot of this stuff is based on things that are totally founded. So here's the thing. Like, it's so easy to be like, well, just face your fears and like get over it. No, like if something real happened to you, i.e. your business closed, i.e. you lost your job, you saw your parents like get foreclosed on, there's some real stuff that like baggage that comes with that. So this is the part where people really avoid it, is that a lot of people actually jump right into the minutia of their money, of like, they think their problem is, I don't have a budget, or I'm not sticking to it, or I'm not disciplined, or whatever it is. And really what the deep-rooted issue is like, there is some stuff that we're holding on to that has continued to impact our decisions going forward. And the biggest thing that I've had to help people overcome in the last year is this idea of the sunk cost fallacy. So have you guys heard of sunk cost fallacy?
Talk more about it.
So the sunk cost fallacy, this is the one thing I learned in college that was useful. It was in my first economics class, and it's the only thing I remember for all of college.
Jeez.
So the sunk cost fallacy is simply this, is that you are making choices based on things that have already happened that can't change going forward. So a very simple example is like, and I'm sure a lot of women can relate to this, is like that piece of clothing in your closet that you know you're never going to fit in again, that you know you're probably not going to wear, or that it's out of style or whatever, but you're like, but I spent so much money on it, so I'm just going to keep it instead of just getting rid of it, right? And what I figured out is that a lot of people are making decisions going forward based on stuff. I'm trying so not to curse right now.
Do your thing.
Based on things that I can't change anymore, right? So it's like, oh, I don't want to do this thing going forward because of this thing that happened in the past. I got burned by money one time. I saw someone get foreclosed on one time. I made some bad decisions in the past. And so you're saying like, oh, because those things happened in the past and I can't move forward, versus thinking like, there's nothing you can do about that now, right? And one of the biggest things that I saw come in 2020 was that a lot of people, in your example, people were not willing to shut down businesses, even though those businesses, like, there was no light for some of these businesses, right? But they're like, but I already spent so much time and energy, and they're trying to recoup something that can't be recouped anymore. So rather than like cut your loss, people are sitting in this space where they're like in limbo.
Can you talk to me about, because it's challenging for that business owner, even you, when you were saying your dress rental company was your baby. So there's a lot of entrepreneurs or just business owners in general that they still have that concept that their business is their baby. So they can't just cut their losses, or they can't just get rid of it. So could you tell them, I guess, a measure that you use to know like, hey, it's time to cut your loss?
Yes. The biggest thing that I look at is the idea of opportunity cost, right? Is that instead of looking at all the things that you've already done, what are you sacrificing going forward that if you were to stay in this, you're not going to be able to do? So let me give you an example from my first business. So my first business, I spent $10,000 on building a website and a system for that business that ultimately did not work. Like 10 grand, guys. I wanted to I was so pissed, right? And so there was a time period where I was like, I need to do everything I can to try to figure out how to make this thing work because I already spent 10 grand on it.
Exactly.
And what I figured out was like, I could keep trying to make this thing work, or I can start fresh and do this thing and figure out like what is the real value of this, right? So in that example, instead of spinning my wheels on that thing that wasn't going to work, I looked at the opportunity cost of like, if I keep spending more time on this, then I can't find new clients. Then I can't go find more inventory. Then I'm still spending time with this web developer that burned me when I can just go find a new one. And when I added up all of those things, the opportunities that I was foregoing to try to make this thing work, it literally did not make sense to stay in there anymore. And that really pushed me to be like, even though it's not an exact cost, like you could just you innately know like that is so much more valuable than staying in this place that isn't doing you any good.
So I guess there's a thin line between quitting too soon and cutting your losses, right? Could you talk to me about when it's time versus you're just giving up?
Oh, this is so hard. I'm gonna say this is, and this goes back to the idea of fear, is are you quitting because you're afraid, right? And like it's going to be hard, or are you quitting because really there's no light. There's no light, right? And it's hard to make a differentiation. So I'll give you a real life example. One of my really good friends, she owned several locations of a beauty salon, right? And they mostly did like hair and nails and stuff like that. Long story short, like people wanting to go and get their nails done and stuff in the way that she was doing it, like it was going to be a long time coming before that would go back to like normal. Exactly. Right? So when she was looking at whether or not to keep running, like she kept looking again at all of the stuff that she already spent on and all that and everything. And the conversation I had to have with her was that we can keep trying to make this thing work, but you're going to keep bleeding money. So that's the first thing is like, if it's not profitable and you don't see profitability coming anytime in the near future, that's obviously an indication, right? But aside from that is like, if you feel like, think about how drained you are right now. Like, and I'm talking about drained. I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm just tired or I feel like I had a hard day. I'm like, you've been drained about this for 8 months now. And even assuming that everything is going to work out great, it would probably take another 2 or 3 years to do that. Do you want to feel like this for the next 2 or 3 years? And that's the difference that I think I have versus a lot of other money people is like, I don't care how much money I'm going to make on it. If I feel like I'm giving my life away and I feel like I'm not going to enjoy the next 2 or 3 years, to me, it's not worth it. So when you're looking at any decision about when to quit or when not to quit, a lot of people will just focus on the money part, but I actually care more about what are you going to be expending in terms of time and energy. And does that feel like it's something that you want to keep doing?
That's good. That's good. I think one of the things that I really love about you, Bernadette, is that you're probably one of the most authentic people that I follow.
Oh,
right.
Thank you.
And I saw that literally happen during a lot of the things that we were experiencing as a community that you spoke out on. Could you talk to me a little bit about how I'm coming?
Yes.
Could you talk to me a little bit about your views on, or maybe your perspective on that you really don't care if you're an influencer, you're a real person and you're still influencing. So,
thank you.
But that comes with a lot of controversy, as I've seen in your comments.
Carla sent me a few things.
Yes,
that I've
it's
seen
like,
from
but
your page.
Bernadette is firing back.
Yeah.
So could you talk to me a little bit about that?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna say this did not come easy for me. I'm gonna be really honest. A lot of people have given me some of this commentary, right? That they're like, You're saying some shit today. Like, I'm like, yeah, because this is exactly how I feel. I have repressed that part of me for a big part of my life. And I'm going to say part of it is because I just got tired of repressing it. And part of it is because I realized that shit needs to be said and people are even just afraid to say that. And I'm going to give you a real example that happened last year that actually kind of changed the game for me, which was there were 2 instances. And by the way, I'm going to just preface this. It's not like I hate all white men. Let's just be like, that's some of the stuff that like people are like, well, you just seem to hate white men. I'm like, no, I don't hate white men. I actually love white men. But it happens to be a lot of these things happened with other white men. So 2 things happened to me last year. The first was I spoke on a panel similar to like a panel that you and I talked about. And it was in front of 600 people. This is like during the pandemic. And it was me and 2 old white men. And they were both like traditional advisors in the finance space. One was a CFP, one was CFA. And for some reason, that panel called me like Bernadette the blogger. And I was like, I don't even have a blog. Like, it's so bizarre, right? Like, so long story short, we go through this panel discussion. And I was like acutely aware that I was the youngest, I was the only female, and I was the only person of color on that panel, right? And I was like, okay, well, that's cool, I guess. Like, you know. And something came up in that panel where basically someone asked the question, you know, why did you pay off your house, right? Or like, why should you pay off your house? Or whatever. And so I gave my reasons about it. And one of the dudes like just came at me, was like, and he basically was like, I think you're wrong. And this is the reason why, whatever, all of his stuff. Right. And like, again, me not even thinking, I was like, cool, bro. Like, glad that you have that opinion. I think that is the purpose of personal finance. It's personal, right? Like you have your opinion. I have my opinion. People have to decide which works for them. And actually neither of them could work for people. But I said, here's the reasons why I chose to pay off my house. And I like listed all of these reasons. And I think the fact that I didn't get like pissed at him, like in front of everybody, but afterwards I was like, what was that? Right. I did not anticipate like the optics of what that looked like. And so I was thinking like, oh, that's just me saying what I have to say. I got dozens of comments that day from women being like, thank you for being a female that stood up to the finance bro. Thank you for being, yeah, he was literally a finance bro, right? Thank you for being a woman of color, saying something that like resonates with me, because part of my story was like, both me and my husband are children of immigrants. And like, yeah, we didn't get the same like, you know, opportunities that other people have gotten or whatever, right? And they were like, thank you for also like being young and like not letting people like older people intimidate you. And I was like, I never really thought of myself that way. It was just me talking, right? So all that to say was that made me realize that I've strayed away from it for a long time, of like, even the way that I look, which is Asian, right? Asian female, right? Like there's people that are going to listen just because of that. And that's where, and representation matters. And also like the way that I choose to communicate things might resonate with people that it might not have resonated with others, right? So I think that's super important.
That's good. That's good. And you said there was 2 incidents.
Oh, so here's the other incident that made me think about it. Was I was asked to be like on a podcast with a guy and another like finance bro, and and again, like he's wanting to pull my audience, like he's trying to do all this stuff or whatever, right? And this was right after the George Floyd stuff happened, right? And I was like having a lot of feelings about a lot of stuff, right? And so he asked like, well, what do you want to talk about on the podcast? And I said, well, I want to talk about race. I want to talk about how that impacts like the, you know, like the ability to build wealth and all of that stuff or whatever, right? And he said to me, he's like, I don't think we should talk about that, because basically he didn't believe that it was real, like that it was true. And I was like, what? Like, are you, right? And he actually said, actually, I believe in reverse discrimination. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me right now, right? And I had to really take a step back to think about like, first of all, I was like, I want to be like, screw you, bro. I don't want to do your podcast, and I don't want to even like have a conversation. But then I really thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I might be the only person that his audience might ever come across that has a different opinion. And so
that's true.
For me to like not do it, right? Like what exposure would that provide to people who might think like him, right? And part of the bigger conversation is like, yeah, we need to have the uncomfortable conversations, and that is worth having, even though it made me really uncomfortable. Exactly. And so that's where I really started thinking of like, one of the biggest points of feedback I've gotten about my audience is that there is a lot of diversity of the people who like seem to resonate with the things that I talk about. And some people are willing to have the conversation with me because for whatever reason they resonate with me. And for the people who don't, like, it's okay to disagree. But that incident made me think about, like, if I keep shying away from everyone who also disagrees with me, then, like, how are we ever going to make progress? Mm-hmm. And that really changed my idea of, like, I'm going to put myself in more uncomfortable situations, and I'm going to speak up more, and I'm not going to, like, back down from it. And that has shown up in a lot of parts of my life.
This is good. I know you have a question.
You exude a lot of confidence. In the way that you express yourself, the topics that you choose to indulge in. This is potentially a weird question. What experience taught you that confidence was important?
I first of all, thank you for saying that. I actually don't feel like I'm a confident person because behind the scenes, there's a lot of mess. There's like one of the things that people have said about me is that I take messy action. And this might sound self-serving, but where my confidence has come from in the last 2 or 3 years is because I literally can afford to do so.
Ooh.
I don't know how else to put it.
Talk more. You're talking spicy, Bernadette.
You are.
So I'm going to say this, right? When I was 10 years ago, right, I was working in corporate America. I was, 26 years old or whatever. I was constantly told to, like, that I had to be, like, put in my place. Like, I literally, if you look at my performance reviews from when I was working, they're like, Bernadette, like, basically doesn't know her place. Like, she doesn't, like, listen to hierarchy. She doesn't, like, whatever, right? But honestly, I think I was a little out of place there because if I was continuing to take a paycheck from somebody, that meant that I had to abide by their rules. Like, I think that's just common sense, right? So what really changed the game for me in the last 2 years was that once I not only, like, paid off all of my debt, but I started realizing I don't just owe people my money. I don't owe people my time and energy that don't deserve it. Mm-hmm. That really, like, opened up the door for, like, I want to say what I want to say, and I can afford to do so because I'm not afraid of losing. Like, what am I going to lose by saying it? So I'm like, an example that happened in real time last year. I had a client who paid me a lot of money every month, like several $1,000s a month, right? Mm-hmm. And, like, long story short, he, like, did not value what I was doing for him, and even at a several $1,000s a month, I still felt like it was not enough. And I had the balls to go to that person and be like, "You're underpaying me, and like, here are my terms, and if, like, you don't like it, basically, I'm gonna walk away." I said it much nicer though, right? And his assumption this whole time was I was just, like, the marketing person, or I'm just, like, I'm like, I work for him, right? And I, like, straight up said to him, I'm like, I make more money doing my own thing than doing stuff for you. So, and by the way, like, I'm close to $1 million of net worth. Like, I don't have to be here. like literally, this is what I said to him. And he had no idea. That's the thing. Like, he had no idea, and he never assumed that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, like, and I had a conversation with someone else, and I said point blank to him, and I said, like, if I looked like you, which was, he's an older white man, I think you would have treated the situation differently. Mm-hmm. But if I was still taking the paycheck and I needed to pay all my bills and I was worried about my mortgage and all that stuff, like, I wouldn't have said that ish, to be honest, right? So part of the reason that I have been able to build a confidence is because I have, by design, made it so that I can afford to take some risks in my life.
We're going to go on a commercial.
Welcome back. We are here with Bernadette Joy. So we've been having a wonderful conversation about a whole lot of stuff, and she was really, like Kyle said, speaking spicy towards the end, and I like that. But we're going to shake it up a little bit. You may have noticed a red box in the middle of the table.
Oh, yeah.
Inside this box are questions. I would like for you to take the box, pick a question, read a question, and answer it.
Oh, this is so fun. That's so cool. Okay. Let's see. What is one moment in your life that made you realize that you're not invincible? This happened this is kind of timely for this episode. So this whole COVID stuff definitely hit me a little bit hard because one of my family members died from COVID before it hit the U.S.
Oh, wow.
So I was following all of the COVID stuff before people like were really freaking out about it because he died in like early March last year. And I mean, that was a real reality check of like, okay, this issue's real. And it was like a family member, right? So it's like not just like, oh, the story that you see on the news. And what was really impactful that time was my family, and he was in the Philippines. My dad is the oldest of 9 kids, right? So it's one of his siblings. And we all had to get together on Zoom to hold a funeral. This is like where it gets kind of like sad, right? But what was so beautiful about that in a weird way was that I got to see what a legacy he left. And when people talked about him, nobody really talked about his job. Nobody talked about how much money he made. Nobody talked about like what a great, employee or whatever he was. They talked about what a great dad he was and what a funny uncle he was. And they showed pictures of him like, imagine like a Filipino dude with like an afro and bell bottoms. like I learned so much stuff about him that I was like thinking like, yeah, none of us are invincible, but we all have the ability to leave a legacy. And that has driven a lot of what I've been doing in the past year.
What is the legacy that you want to leave?
I was going to ask that. Go ahead.
You know what? I don't know that it's fully written yet. I will say that some of the kind of low-hanging fruit for me is I totally want to have rich auntie vibes. So I have a couple of friends who are like, none of us have kids. We don't want kids. Like, don't get me wrong. I love other people's kids and stuff, but I'm like, I'm cool, right? But that doesn't mean that I'm the person in my family where I'm like everyone's godmother because they're like, she seems like she has her shit together. And like something happens, like we're sending her kids to her. And so one of the legacies I really want to live, aside from like the money stuff, is like I want to be that auntie that like is fun and teaches them things that are more about life, not just about like money and all of that. And one of the biggest things that I've really been thinking about is the idea of going back to the idea of like changing the face of wealth in America is that, even with what I've been doing right now, like I may not be able to change the world, but I can change the lives of the people that I've interacted with. And I'm starting to see some of that like come to fruition now. And it's super exciting. So I continue to think about how I can change the face of wealth in America as part of my legacy. And I think it's going to be in ways that I probably didn't even expect.
I love that. If today was your last day, Bernadette, God forbid, what would be your message to all of your nieces and nephews as that auntie?
So this is actually in my a lot of people stray away from like having a will and like all that stuff because it's like gets kind of morbid. But I already have a will and stuff in place, and it says like your guys are not allowed to cry because I've had a great life, and I asked everyone to have a karaoke party for me instead. And the thing that I really want people to think about is like there is no wrong way to live a life, in my opinion. A friend told me this, that there is literally 7 billion ways to live a life. And that's because there's like 7 billion people in the world, and no 2 ways are exactly the same. So however it is that you want to live your life, as long as you're happy with it, it shouldn't matter what everyone else is saying.
This is good. When did you come to this perspective? I feel like if more people had this perspective, I feel like they would be happier, and I don't know, the world would definitely be a better place. This perspective of I'm doing this, I'm living, but I'm really not concerned about what everyone says. Was it the resources that created this? Was it like pre-COVID were you like this, or like just kind of walk me through that process?
Pre-COVID, I was definitely like this. I've had this inkling my whole life in the way that I'm going to say I would love to say that this was a product of like, oh, wisdom, or I'm just like super smart. It was literally trial by fire, as in like I tried the way of like caring what everyone else was doing and trying to follow what everyone did, and it wasn't working. And when I say it wasn't working, it means I like really wasn't happy. And part of what I talk about a lot in the money stuff is that as much as I talk about money, I actually talk probably more about mental health than I do about money, and this is what I really care about. And there have been several points in my life where I just was not happy. And when I peel back the layers of why I wasn't happy, it was because I was continually trying to fit myself into a narrative that just didn't make sense for me. So I would love to say I was like, oh, I'm just like super wise and this is how I've always been. It's like, no, it's because I tried it 100 times. And finally, the 101st time, I was like, okay, we're not doing that anymore. And what I think has been really game changing for me is that I actually had this thought a couple of weeks ago. So right now, as we're recording this episode, we're like in this midst of like, there's been an uprising in like Asian hate, right, in the U.S. And my whole life, like ever since I was little, I would get this kind of narrative from my family, from my friends of like, you're too loud, like you talk too much, you need to like obey more, like all of that stuff. And I was always like thinking like something must be wrong with me because everyone's telling me to do this thing and it's like I just can't. It's really hard to do that. And you know, some of this stuff has started to bubble up. And several people have reached out to me in the last weeks, like saying again, like thank you for speaking up about certain, you know, these topics and everything. And I had this thought a couple of weeks ago that like I was actually made for times like this. And instead of trying to fit into that narrative of like, oh, you're too loud, you're too whatever, is like to lean into those strengths and use them for things that actually matter to me. And so where I think a lot of people get stuck is that the things that they think are their weaknesses are probably actually what they're really great at. It's just in the wrong context. So you just got to find the right context. And it happens to be the context of the world right now is actually in my favor.
Yeah, no, literally. Like you come on a lot of podcasts and panel discussions and TV interviews and speaking engagements, you know, and you probably get some of the similar questions, you know, about, you know, who you are, what do you do, how'd you do it, what happened, you know, all these same questions. What's a question that you haven't gotten yet that you would prefer to answer?
I would love for people to ask me more about my interests in K-pop. Nobody really asks me about that. Here's why. I know, this is random, right? Here's why. Okay, let me share this with you. So if you don't know what K-pop is, Korean pop music. I grew up loving music, right? So I listened to all kinds of music. When I was younger, so I'm from Queens, and so like I listened to like a lot of like LL Cool J, 50 Cent, like they're all from Queens, right? And then I listened, like high school was like the boy bands and also like Boyz II Men, Brandy, like those are the kind of things that I listened to. And then I moved to the South and I started listening to country music, which is like completely opposite, but I also love country music. And then in the last couple of years, I got really into K-pop. And the reason that I wish more people would ask me about it is because I know a lot about K-pop, and why it's really exciting to me is because this is the first time that I've actually seen Asian representation, like on like a worldwide scale. And the fact that it hasn't really shown up in still a lot of like American culture like fascinates me. And one of the biggest here's a perfect example, is like I have been trying to figure out how to invest more money into K-pop, but like nobody in America knows how to do that because like you literally have to be like over there to do it. Like if you wanted to invest like on the stock market there, you have to be like a Korean citizen. I'm not Korean, I'm Filipino, which is like another thing, right? But here's like the news that happened recently. So like a week ago, do you guys know BTS?
Yes.
Okay, so finally people know who BTS is, right? So BTS is under a company called Big Hit. And Big Hit, like 10 years ago, it's a fascinating story for anyone who's interested in business. And basically Big Hit 10 years ago was like broke, like had no money, like was bankrupt basically. And then they started this group BTS, and like we know what happened to BTS, like they are like a cultural phenomenon right now. And they went on IPO a couple months ago, and like they went for like $1 billion. Like this is like, you know, the unicorns that people think about in the US, but like no one really talks about it here. Last week, that company bought the music company that manages Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Demi Lovato. Like, this is equivalent of like, you know, Tesla buying like Ford, right? And I'm like reading all this stuff because, again, I'm like obsessed with them. Like, how is this not making American news? Like, I don't understand why that's happening. And why I find K-pop so fascinating is because they're basically taking the models of what they've built to create these music groups and now infusing it into America. And so as a business owner, there's so much to learn about how to do business differently from a cultural perspective, but also from a strategy perspective. And it is literally worth billions of dollars. So I actually did a presentation about how you should infuse K-pop into your into your business model. And I would love to like just do that.
So I guess you said something earlier that was really profound. I'm actually about to write it down. How do you infuse business into culture? What would be your, I guess, 3 to 5 step process? Yeah.
So some of the things, going back to the K-pop model. All right. So there's a couple things that I've learned, right? So one is to really engage with your audience on a personal level. And I know like that sounds really generic, but that's actually one of the things that they're teaching the American artists to do, is that a lot of these idols in the K-pop world, like they spend so much time cultivating their audience and really like interacting with them. And what I've noticed is that like in the US, like for example, in both like the actor world and the music world there, like these celebrities will go on tour just to meet fans. Like they won't even do like a full-blown concert or anything. Like they'll literally call it like a fan tour. And they just like meet people. And like I don't see, you know, the artists here like just going and like meeting people. And so for me, like that has really infused into my business of like, even though it's like a lot sometimes to manage my own social media and stuff, like I probably won't ever fully outsource that because one of the things that people say is like, it feels really authentic when you're on social media. I'm like, yeah, because it's literally me. Like I am literally responding to all 150 comments today, right? And it seems like a lot of work, but it's worth it because I want people to really feel like they are connected to me and my brand. So that's one thing. The other piece that I think is really different about that model is that they have this whole model where you like you find potential and you like really train them up. And that is not something I really see. And this is from me being in corporate HR for 10 years. And I'm sure you guys have come across this, right? Is like whenever you like look for a job, they always want someone who already has the experience.
Exactly.
Versus like teaching them how to do it. And what is so interesting is like they literally will just find like people off the street and be like, you look like you could be a K-pop celebrity. And then they just train the crap out of them and like turn them into these celebrities. So I really believe that like there's a lot of untapped potential. But people are just not willing to take the time to invest in training and like teaching people. This is why I teach on so many different levels with like financial literacy. Like I have classes that are like $20 up to like $3,000. Like I believe a lot of people have just untapped potential that no one's willing to teach them. So that's that piece. And then the other piece is like, just like freaking have fun. Like, like the reason that I like, you know, I'm super into fashion. I'm super into like art and music and stuff. And I don't shy away from that. And especially in my space in personal finance, a lot of people like think that they have to be like the expert. And by being the expert, they have to be like boring and dry and like talk about interest rates and shit like that. I'm like, no, like let's talk about fun things. And that has really changed the game for me. And thinking about like, I'll give you an example. Last year, I was going to go speak at a convention, and I spent the whole day before like figuring out what I was going to wear because I was like, you know, I'm still like feeling a little imposter, and so I should look professional and all that stuff. Then I go to this convention, and this guy was there, and he was literally wearing like a white T-shirt and Jordans, and I was like, that's what I would want to wear. Why did I just wear that? He could wear it, so why can't I, right? Yeah. And so if you notice, like, even when I post on social media, you go see me speak somewhere, like, I'm not dressed like corporate or whatever. Like, I dress my own style, and people have even, talked about that being part of my overall brand.
I love that. I love that. So engage with your audience on a personal level, train up potential, because there is a lot of untapped potential, and freaking have some fun. Like, have some fun. Bernadette, this conversation has been just amazing. And I appreciate you. I feel like you are definitely a role model that I think a lot of people need to follow. A lot of women can definitely gain inspiration from. And I believe that a lot of men can look up to as well.
Wow.
So I definitely want you to continue to keep going, keep charging, keep staying motivated, keep having fun, and just keep being you.
Thank you.
Wouldn't change a thing. Wouldn't change a thing. So I guess my last question is, I've asked this before, but, I definitely believe that you would have a powerful message. If you were to leave the world with one billboard message and you were only to get one sentence that could go on a billboard that everyone in the world would see that one billboard, what would be your message to the world?
You are enough. And I think that's something I've struggled with my whole life as to whether or not just me who I am. If I never made another dollar the rest of my life, and I never helped another person, me as a person, just being is totally enough. And that's something that I hope more people can internalize. And I think that's where we have a lot of work to do.
What are your thoughts?
I think this has been really inspirational.
Definitely.
I think I love what you said in the beginning, just about changing essentially people's perception of what wealth looks like what that face is for that. I think in a lot of ways, I think you kind of touched on it in different ways. When you think about the stereotype of Asian people, it's not necessarily how you live your life. So it's cool.
It's amazing. Amazing. You are enough. You are enough. Engage with your audience on a personal level. Cut your losses. Cut your losses. Continue to invest in yourself. Continue to invest in the people around you. Up-level your network. Find somebody that you can train, that you can develop, that you can engage with, that you can empower, because we are here for service. Stop worrying about what other people think, and be the best version of yourself, because you are enough, and have some fun. We are here with Bernadette Joy, that brings so much joy on the Around the Way podcast.